Peace, everyone, and welcome back to another Friday night Bible study here with the Israelite Nation Worldwide Ministries. My name is Miriam, and I'm coming at you guys from the Northeast area to bring you guys another Rise Takeover. But obviously, I can't do this alone, so I have to bring in my esteemed panel. So first, I like to bring in Rachel from the Atlanta branch. Hey, Rachel, how you doing?
Good. Excited to be here.
Okay, perfect. Next, I'm going to bring in Sarah from the St. Louis branch.
Hello.
Hey,
Hi.
Sarah, how you doing?
Very excited to be here.
Perfect. And last but not least, I'm bringing in Hadassah from the Northeast branch.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, welcome. So, obviously, we have some heavy hitters today for this broadcast. I hope you guys enjoy. As always, please make sure to like, to comment, to subscribe, to put all the sevens in the chat, blow up the chat, all that stuff. Today, we have a really good topic, a really good discussion plan for you guys. So I hope that you enjoy and you also participate. So I feel like we should just jump into it, guys, right?
Let's do it. Yeah.
Hey. So today's topic is mind over matter. I was thinking about this because there was a YouTube video that I was watching of this guy, and he did a 4-day hike. And he said that one thing that he really learned from it was when he would look at how far the mountain was, he was really discouraged. He was like, I can't do this. That's so far. Like, I can't believe I'm going to be all the way up there. But then as he took that first step, and 10 minutes passed, another 10 minutes passed, he was even closer to the mountain. And he was like, oh, okay, this isn't that bad. And then he would see where he was and he'd be like, wow, I was there and now I'm here. So that kind of got me thinking about the fact that our minds love to do this thing where when we're faced with a new task or something that may seem impossible, our mind says, maybe we shouldn't do this. Maybe we should think about, doing something else, doing what we're normally used to doing, not trying new things, because trying new things is hard. It's not an easy thing to do. Um, and it's a defense mechanism, right? It's something our mind uses to protect ourselves, protect us from possibly getting hurt, protect us from failure, protect us from not feeling good about ourselves. So it can be a great thing, but also it can be a very debilitating thing because then we're not allowing ourselves to really explore our options, explore who we are as people, and try to find things that we like, things that we don't like, and just learn about ourselves. So I wanted to have this discussion with you guys to talk about why our minds do that, but also different strategies we can use to combat what our mind does. And also look back in the scriptures and see what our forefathers did to get through those roadblocks and get to a point where they faced their fears, they reached their goals, and they did it with grace and dignity. And now we can read their stories and say, wow, like that was crazy. Like they really did that. And they really saved our people. They really did that for themselves. What do you guys think?
Yeah, no, definitely. I definitely agree with what you were saying about how powerful the mind is.
Mhm.
It's actually once you realize that you can control that voice, then that power turns it's you take back that power. You're not a victim of your thoughts.
Mhm.
So I think it's a very important, I think, lesson and thing to talk about, because everyone deals with negative thinking and things that just don't motivate them or keep them back. So we have to find ways to unlock potential inside of us and motivate ourselves, since we should be our number one fan. I truly believe that. So very
Yes.
excited to dig in and see what kind of anecdotes we have of our own lives and what we could learn from even our ancestors or how to do that.
Yes, for sure. Yes. I love that. I love how we should be our number one fan. That kind of goes back to what Rachel was talking about in your podcast, and just talking about being your own bestie, being your own best friend, and being there for yourself. And I think that really speaks to having that mind over matter and trusting yourself for sure. And knowing, obviously, trusting the God of Israel too, and knowing that at the end of it, like, if it's meant to be, it will be. And if it's not, then it's just not for you, and you got to move on to the next thing.
Right.
Yeah, and I want to jump into, I think it's so important for us to have this discussion as well, which is why I think this is such a needed topic, just because in the life of the Israelite, I think so much of what we see physically can be really discouraging. You have the world sort of telling you a certain narrative, we're going against the grain. There's not a lot of us. So a lot of times we do have to tap into our mind and our spirituality and realize that there are things bigger than the physicality that we see in order to push ourselves to that next level. So I think this is a really great topic for anyone at any stage of their life, any age, because we're all just trying to progress here and do the best that we can. So like Sarah said, I'm excited to dig in as well.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay. So, should we just get right into it
Yes.
then? Okay. So, I actually have a question for you guys. Um, have there been your own, personal moments in your lives where you've been faced with a new experience that you weren't really sure if you can handle? Um, and if so, how did you get past that? If you did get past it, how did you get past it? And what did you do to get past it?
Well, I can speak personally that there definitely has been like multiple situations and multiple opportunities where it's or where it feels like I won't be able to complete it or won't be able to start it, or like even just thinking outside of my brain, like I can't do this. You know what I mean? Like this isn't something that is for me to do. Um, and I think how I got past it is just like, okay, taking the first step can be like the most important one, because that's the step that tells you like if this is something you should continue or if this is something that you need to stop doing immediately. So I would just tell myself, just take the first step, just try it, see what it's about. And if it's not something that it's about, or that's something that you're about, then you can always back out of it. You can always just be like, okay, I'm going to try a different route.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think, and there have definitely been moments where I haven't been able to get past it. And I think those are definitely louder than the moments that I have been able to get past it. So I also try to use those moments where it is, or it does feel so loud that like, oh, I can't do this, I can't get past this, to just try to move myself forward and try to just teach the other moments that will come.
Yeah. Yeah. I like what you're saying about give yourself that grace to know to like try different things and back out like if you need to. I think sometimes we do get bogged down and we think our step should look a certain way. But then I think when we take a step back and realize we do have choices and we do have like authority over our own actions, that we can do that at any point, no matter what anyone says, and do it our way. So I think that's definitely important. Um, I could definitely reflect on a time where I've thought that my mind was telling me negative thoughts and combating what I was actually trying to do. Was when I was first going into high school. I coming from middle school, of course. I just remember feeling so nervous. I picked up like 3 different outfits like a week before. There was like anxiety running through my whole body. I was asking like older friends what it's like and like taking notes and trying to like prepare for every thing that could come. And I do think that's important, Hadassah, taking that first step. So literally the first step into my high school building, I felt a little bit of the pressure ease, but it still took, honestly, it probably took until my sophomore or junior year for me to really feel comfortable in high school. And that's just because of time. I think after a while, our bodies and minds are really good at adapting. So
Yeah.
that's at really no push of my like own, because I was feeling negative thoughts throughout the whole thing. But I think later on, I kind of learned to combat those negative thoughts by realizing that our brain is basically a computer. And for some reason, the world that we're in, it's programmed to think negatively, but there is a way to kind of deprogram it.
Yeah.
And that comes from really like intercepting those negative thoughts, like literally intercepting those negative thoughts and inserting positive ones. So
Mhm.
I love affirmations. I think those really help. And I literally just say into the mirror into myself whenever I need a boost. So
Mhm.
whenever I feel that sort of anxiety now, that's kind of what I turn to.
Mm. I love that. I really love that. And I love how you found something that works for you, because a lot of the times there will be articles and videos and talks about how people use different things to help them get out of a negative headspace. But I think what's really important is finding what works for you, and finding your specific strategy, because obviously what works for one person isn't going to work for 10 million other people, right?
Yeah.
So you need to find what deprograms those thoughts in your head and find what gets you out of bed, what gets those positive thoughts going, what gets you to look in the mirror and say, I like what I'm looking at, I like what I'm seeing, and allows you to get to a place where you're like, this is good. Like, I did what I didn't think I would be able to do, and I'm proud of myself. And I can trust that if I'm faced with another obstacle, that I'll be able to face it because of this experience that I have.
Yes, certainly you learn to prove stuff to yourself. Like you
Mhm.
learn to trust yourself the more you enter those situations, and then you could go back to it and be like, I did that, so I could do this.
Right,
It's powerful.
for sure.
Yeah, I so agree with all that's been said. And I love what Hadassah you said about taking the first step. And then Sarah, what you mentioned about having like grace for yourself. Cause I feel like I recently went over a mind over matter sort of instance. I had some certifications that I had to do for my job that had a deadline and they were very intense. I think like the pass rate was like a 60 because it was so hard. And I was extremely stressed out. I feel like sometimes you get in these slumps where like you literally just don't want to study. Like if you're like in an execution mode or whatever. And
Yeah.
that's where I was. I was like, I have no power to even want to start this. But like Hadassah said, like once you start taking the first step, like setting a timer like 5, 10 minutes just to like dedicate towards it, you start to get into a rhythm and it goes. But I use that example because I basically had that come up. I knew it was going to be a challenge and it felt very difficult because while I'm doing my normal like day-to-day duties, I also have to like study on the side and set aside time for that. And it was hard. It was very hard for me to navigate, but knowing like past experiences, like Sarah said, I was like, listen, I'm gonna need God to do a little some here because it feels impossible. And
Yeah.
so, just like as a quick summary, I had basically 3 attempts to do it before the close of the period, and I failed both my first times, just being very honest. But I ended up doing a prayer program and really taking set aside the time to like study again. And I was eventually able to pass. But again, I think using your spirituality, know what works, and not being afraid of failure, like Sarah said, giving yourself grace, realizing that you can still get there. Your journey may just have bumps is really the key because God of Israel can come through for you so
Yeah.
well, but I definitely relate.
I love that, Rachel, and congratulations on passing. But no, I love how, and I think that's something that's so true. Sometimes you really need to take a step back and reevaluate what's going on,
Mhm.
pray, meditate on the scriptures, really think about what you're doing and why you're doing it, and then come back to it and be like, okay, I'm in the totally different headspace. I feel like I'm ready for this. And you go at it and you attack it and you do it. And that's one of the most amazing feelings, because you're like, you used all your resources. You used, your resources to study or do whatever you needed to do to get to that point. And then you also used the God of Israel and the spiritual resource. And you turn to him and you say, this is something that I really want, not only for myself, but for my future, for the future of the nation, like anything I can do. So I think that that is really commendable, because sometimes you really do have to take a step back and look at what you're doing and see, is this what I really want to do? Okay, it is. Let me call upon my Father and see how we can really get this thing happening.
Yeah. No, I definitely like that analogy of like using all your tools like in your toolbox sort of thing, because then once you do that and you do the spiritualness of it and the physical, then if it doesn't happen for you, it was not meant for you. Then you
Exactly.
can finally move on. But until you actually use all that you have at your disposal, then you'll always be questioning, if I did this, that would have happened. There comes that regret. But I like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Wow.
think even, I'm sorry,
No, go
I
ahead.
think
Go ahead.
even the human mind can get very like tunnel visioned at times. So if you're in something for too long and it feels like something you can't do and it feels like something that you can't grasp, then your mind focuses on the fact that you can't do it. Then your mind focuses on the fact that like that's the part that it of course wants to focus on. So I think even the idea of taking a step back and just taking time away from doing whatever you're doing, whether it be studying or whether it be something else that you feel as if you can't do, like taking that step back and using that time of taking the step back to like pray or meditate or do something that you need to do, that can like make all the difference, because then your mind is out of it and it feels like once you're coming back to it and you're at a better headspace and you're level headed, then it feels like something you can definitely attain for sure.
Yes, for sure, Hadassah. I'm loving the discussion we're having right now. Put some fires in the chat, throw some sevens in the chat, all that. Put your own answers in the chat too. If you ever felt like, you had times where you didn't think that something was possible and you got past it and you did it. Of course, we want to hear your stories. Let us know what's going on with you. And I think that there's something that I wanted to get right into. Let me pull this up. Let's see. Okay. So there are a bunch of strategies that people can use to get through their different roadblocks. But there are a couple that really stand out to me, especially after reading all the scriptures that we have for you guys tonight. And those strategies are using prayer, thinking about the big picture, which is thinking outside of yourself, get an outside perspective. Sometimes you need to take a step back and ask someone else, like, hey, does this seem right? Does this seem like something I should be doing? Evaluate your own priorities, think about what you want out of your life, what you see for yourself, and then also knowing your limits, knowing when to say, you know what, this isn't meant for me, this isn't what I see for myself, let me do something else. So I definitely want to use these strategies as we go through each of the biblical figures we talk about tonight, and see what kind of strategies they used to get through their roadblocks and how we can even apply these strategies to our lives. And of course, if you guys come up with any other strategies, please put them in the chat. We want to know, we want your input. We want to see what you guys think, hear what you guys think about our strategies. So I think we should get right into the scriptures. When I was thinking about who we could possibly talk about who had roadblocks, the first person that came to my head was Queen Esther, because as we know, she had a huge roadblock. And she didn't even basically, she saved the nation. But before she did all of that, she had to get through her own roadblocks and her own emotional and mental barriers. So I think we can start here with Esther 5. Do I have a volunteer for a reader?
I can read it.
Okay, go right
Okay.
ahead.
Now it came to pass on the third day that Esther put on her royal apparel and stood in the inner court of the king's house, over against the king's house, and the king sat upon his royal throne in the royal house, over against the gate of the house. And it was so, when the king saw Esther the queen standing in the court, that she obtained favor in his sight. And the king held out to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand. So Esther drew near and touched the top of the scepter. Then the king said unto her, What wilt thou, Queen Esther, and what is thy request? It shall be even given thee to the half of the kingdom. And Esther answered, If it seem good unto the king, let the king and Haman come this day unto the banquet that I have prepared for him. Then the king said, Cause Haman to make haste, that he may do as Esther hath said. So the king and Haman came to the banquet that Esther had prepared. And the king said unto Esther at the banquet of wine, What is thy petition? And it shall be granted thee. And what is thy request? Even to the half of the kingdom it shall be performed. Then Esther answered and said, My petition and my request is, if I have found favor in the sight of the king, and if it please the king to grant my petition and to perform my request, let the king and Haman come to the banquet that I shall prepare for them, and I will do tomorrow as the king hath said.
Okay, so before we go to the next part, I just want to talk about how beautiful Esther must have been to have this sort of like hold over the king, for him to say, It shall be done over half
Yeah.
of his kingdoms. And King Ahasuerus reigned over like
So
a
many.
bunch of
Yeah.
kingdoms, like 29, 154 kingdoms, 29 the whole thing. So imagine half of that, and he said, It shall be done unto half of the kingdom. I don't even know. Obviously, everyone always says like the power of an Israelite woman, but it's like, oh my goodness, the fact that Esther was so nervous to even go towards the king, go up to the king without having an appointment, without the king being prefaced to the fact that she was going to come to him and ask him, come to his court, and for him to say, oh my gosh, yeah. And other than that, like I'm going to rule out this decree upon half of my kingdoms and all. Like, what? Like, that is crazy. Like, there's no way, but obviously there's a way.
Yeah. Imagine the kind of authority she carried within herself, even through feeling not sure. It must be just a natural, like you said, that power of an Israelite woman just exceeds through her.
Right.
But it's funny that you highlighted that, because I think the thing that stood out to me as well is like it starts off with Esther put on her royal apparel. And it reminds me of what, Sarah, you said about you were getting ready for high school and had like 3 different outfits planned. And I feel like that's a really good strategy, actually, is to like when you're in that like mind over matter slump, like just looking good also makes you feel good. And it's like she put on that royal apparel and she remembered who she was. Like it makes you like, I don't know, like whenever you have a cute outfit on, like you start walking a little different. You start that can also really help, like with just playing the game of life, if you will.
Yeah.
No, I could definitely relate to that. My steps are just a little bit more confident when I know I look good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh my God, when you feel good, you look good, you smell good. Yeah. Especially when you get like a compliment on top of that. Nobody can top the
What?
You can see it. Like I've literally seen girls walk and I'm like, is she feeling herself? You know, so I love that.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love, and like you said, how she must have felt in that apparel. She probably walked into that room saying like, no doubts, all the
Mhm.
confidence, no stops. Like I'm coming in there and I'm asking for what I'm asking for, not even asking. I'm telling you what I want, and you're gonna give it to me, and that's how it's gonna go. Like imagine, like, and we read the story every year, so we know how she was feeling before this. So imagine going from that to I'm going in there and this is what's going to happen and no one's going to stop me and that's it. Like
Yes.
that's so amazing. That's the power of, prayer and having that support from your people, knowing that like, okay, they're supporting me, they're backing me, so I got to do this.
Yes. It's so
And then,
interesting.
oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
And then it doesn't even feel like you're doing it by yourself. It feels like, although she was the only person in the room, and although she was the one putting on the royal apparel and walking in there like, I own this place, like this is me. It didn't. I'm sure in her mind it couldn't have felt like she was doing it all by herself and she was in this alone, because she had literally the entire Israelite nation backing her, because they're like, I'm sure also in the Israelites' head they're like, this also affects us, so probably we should, we should probably as much as possible, because this also could very much so affect our whole situation. But I'm sure just even that sense of community that she must have felt as she was walking into that room, I'm sure it couldn't have felt like she was walking in by herself, although physically she was.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, that sense of like purpose and sense of like your place in your community, and having people look up to you, definitely it makes you stand a little taller.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
does. And it really adds on accountability, because I know when I was studying for my certs, I was talking to people like, shout out to Elder Terry and Asher. But what's funny is they were like, I'm going to pray for you. And like that made me even more nervous during my study slump, because I was like, I cannot be out here not doing it. People pray for me.
Yeah. Oh my God.
From your community. So like that's a good tip as well. It's like, lean on your community, talk to your brother, and like part of you is like, I'm sure Esther, like Hadassah said, she was like, she had the backing of her nation, but it's also like part of you is also accountable of all these people's lives as well. Like you can't not give it your all. So that's something else.
Yeah, for sure. Oh my God. Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's move on to the next scripture. This is still Esther, but this is when she actually had the banquet with the king and Haman.
Should I continue reading?
Yes, please.
Okay. So the king and Haman came to the banquet with Esther the queen. And the king said again unto Esther on the second day at the banquet of wine, what is thy petition, Queen Esther? And it shall be granted thee. And what is thy request? And it shall be performed, even to half of the kingdom. And Esther the queen answered and said, if I have found favor in thy sight, O king, and if it please the king, let my life be given me at my petition, and my people at my request. For we are sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be slain, and to perish. But if we had been sold for bondmen and bondwomen, I had held my tongue, although the enemy could not countervail the king's damage. Then the king Ahasuerus answered and said unto Esther the queen, who is he, and where is he that durst presume in his heart to do so? And Esther said, the adversary and enemy is this wicked Haman. Then Haman was afraid before the king and the queen. And the king, arising from the banquet of wine in his wrath, went into the palace garden. And Haman stood up to make request for his life to Esther the queen, for he saw that there was evil determining against him by the king. And the king returned out of the palace garden into the place of the banquet of wine, and Haman was fallen upon the bed whereon Esther was. Then said the king, will he force the queen also before me in the house? As the word went out of the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. And Harbona, one of the chamberlains, said before the king, behold also the gallows 50 cubits high, with which Haman hath made for Mordecai, who had spoken good for the king, standeth in the house of Haman. Then the king said, hang him thereon. So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Then was the king's wrath pacified.
Mm.
Wow. Well, so first, Esther had no sort of, oh, I don't know if I should say this.
Mm-hmm.
She said, "No, I'm coming in here. I'm telling you exactly what happened and who's doing it." The king made no sort of pause. As soon as he heard who it was, walked out of the room to tell them, "Get the gallows ready." And then walked back into the room and had them put the bag over Haman's head to have him hung in the gallows. Like, there was no, I'm not going to say there was no need for Esther to be nervous, but there was no need for her to be nervous because the way that it transpired after everything, like, that has to be the God of Israel's hands working, because there's no way that would have happened if Esther had gone without the praying and fast and the support of her people, and of course Mordecai coming in, and just her getting that strength in the numbers of her people and from her God. And then you go, and she goes and she has the feast, and immediately, no questions, no discussions are had. Haman can't even fight for his life. They're like, "Nope, get him out of here. He's being hung in the gallows. I'm so sorry. Sorry, not sorry. It's happening."
Yeah. And you even see the like planning behind her actions too. Like she made sure Hammond was there,
Yeah.
um, just so this could happen. And so, of course, it shows the wisdom of a powerful Israelite woman. But yeah, it also shows like when you do have that purpose and that passion, like there's nothing not to be confident about. Like,
Right.
I think that definitely shows in the way this went about.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's also like you said, when you have that amount of people backing you, like there's no out. Like you can't just say, "Yeah, I'm gonna do it," and then be like, "Actually, I don't think so." Like you gotta, if you're saying you're gonna do something, especially like that, and you have all these people backing you, you gotta do it, and you gotta do it right.
Right.
And that's exactly what she did. And that just shows to me that once you use that prayer and once you use that community, then it's like these things can actually happen for you, and they can actually happen even better than you thought they would. You just have to use your resources.
Yes. And one thing that I love that Sarah just highlighted is like, I think it's interesting in the story you see like she doesn't like outwardly just ask for it. Like Sarah said, there seems to be like a lot of thought and like planning into it. And I feel like that even in itself is another strategy. Like sometimes when we have a big obstacle and that obstacle is like a person, like a human being as well, shifting the focus like from inside and feeling self-conscious to like outwardly and like trying to like get in the person's head, how best can I approach this, is like also a really good strategy, is like shifting the focus outwardly so that you can accomplish your goal and not feel so self-conscious as well.
Oh my gosh, yeah, for sure. That's so great. I wish we could add that to the list of strategies, but I feel like we should go back to the list and see which ones Esther used to get past her roadblocks. So let's pull this up. So we have prayer, thinking about the big picture, getting outside perspectives, evaluating your priorities, and knowing your limits. So, audience and panel, what do you guys think? Like, what are the strategies that Esther used to get past her roadblocks?
I definitely think about big picture like immediately, especially in the verses that we read, because instead of worrying about the moment of like, okay, how should I walk into the room? What should I say? Get stuck in the details and what for a lot of people bring on that anxiousness because you are thinking about doing every single thing right. Thinking about the big picture and saving your people's life and fulfilling that for your people, that's definitely something to get you out of the details, and that will influence how you walk into a room and what you say and how you say it. And I could even apply that to my daily life as well. So, yeah.
I think also prayer, and not even just prayer, but also just the support that she had from her entire nation. Like she had the entire nation praying for her and fasting for her and just trying to give her as much spiritual strength that she would need so that she could walk into that room and do what she did. Because she had the physical, she had she had some of the physical strength that she needed. I'm sure some of that mental and emotional strain came with doing that, but she had the physical. She had her clothes, I'm sure she had her looks, she had the title, she's literally the queen. So
Right.
she had that. But I think the prayer and the support, the fasting, all of that, that came from her community and that came from the people in the nation, I think that also like greatly helped her do what she did. So I could also very much so see prayer being one of the strategies she used.
Yeah, I agree with both those. And I also though think
Yeah, for sure. And then
no, go ahead, Miriam.
no, go right ahead, go right ahead.
I agree with both those statements. And I also think she ended up getting outside perspective, like solicited from Mordecai when she was kind of nervous. And he was like, think not that you'll escape this just because you're the queen, like God of Israel will find somebody else to do it if it's not you, and woe unto you. So I definitely think she got that much needed advice as well from her family.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I couldn't agree more with the three of those. I think that she definitely used all three to think about her place and her role in the nation and how she can use her what's the word? How she used her place, her title to save her people. Because that's a lot. Like when you hear that all your people are about to be killed, you're just like, how, like, what, you kind of like forget who you are. I feel like she definitely like forgot who she was for a second and was like, but how am I supposed to save all my people? Like, I'm just me. Like, I'm just Esther. Like, what? How's little old me gonna do this? But then Mordecai was like you're the queen. Like, you can actually do something here. And like Rachel said, he said, if it's not you, it'll be someone else. But you don't want to be caught at the brunt of not being the person that's doing it. Like, you want to be the person because you don't want to be the someone else, or you don't want someone else to be the someone else, right? So I think that her even getting that outside perspective from Mordecai really, really helped her um kind of put everything into perspective and say, yeah, this is bigger than me. So let me get everyone to come together and pray, and let me pray so that we can get me as strong as we can for me to do this thing.
And I actually, just really quickly, I love what you said, Miriam, like about the like perspective that Esther had of like just me, because it like triggered memories of like Moses kind of did the same thing where he was like, God of Israel, like, are you serious? Like me. And even like when they were picking the next king and they saw David, sorry, I can't believe that. He's so small, like he's a farmer's boy. Like it's funny because it's like knowing the God of Israel, he loves like an underdog story. So I feel like oftentimes, even if you don't feel like you're the best speaker or like the best like prominent figure, you haven't, like, you are probably 10 times more likely to be the person for the job, because God of Israel just loves receiving his glorification that way, and the person you would least expect as well.
Yeah, for sure. And that's with like a lot of our leaders. Like, a lot of them were underdogs. A lot of them were the people you wouldn't expect to be at the top. But the God of Israel obviously saw something in them that others didn't see, and used that to his advantage, because then it's like a sneak attack.
Yes. And I definitely feel like God of Israel loves to show his power. Like if you take someone like Moses, who not comfortable speaking, and you make him the face of who freed us from enslavement, it's like, well, that has to be nothing but the God of Israel.
For sure.
So the same thing with us.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm loving this discussion. Everyone in Cyberland, everyone on the live, please put the fires in the chat. like, subscribe, share. If you're liking what you're hearing, make sure to say that you're liking what you're hearing. But also make sure you share this with someone who you really think could learn from it, and someone who lets the matter take over, let their mind take over, and doesn't really think about the fact that they can do something if they really put their mind to it and use their resources and gets the help that they need to get to where they're trying to be. So I think we should go on to our next figure. So let me pull this up. The next person I wanted to use was Hannah, because she had to have a lot of emotional and spiritual strength to do what she did in giving up her only child to the God of Israel. So let's go and read about Hannah. Do I have a volunteer reader here?
I
Sure.
can. Go ahead, Sarah.
And they rose up in the morning early and worshiped before the Lord and returned and came to their house to Ramah. And Elkanah knew Hannah, his wife, and the Lord remembered her. Wherefore it came to pass when the time was come about after Hannah had conceived, that she bare a son, and called his name Samuel, saying, Because I've asked him of the Lord. And the man Elkanah and all his house went up to offer unto the Lord the yearly sacrifice in his vow. But Hannah went up not, for she said unto her husband, I will not go up until the child be weaned. And then I will bring him, he may appear before the Lord, and there abide forever. And Elkanah her husband said unto her, Do what seemeth thee good, tarry until thou have weaned him. Only the Lord establish his word. So the woman abode and gave her son suck until she weaned him. And when she had weaned him, she took him up with her with 3 bullocks and 1 ephah of fat flour and a bottle of wine, and brought him into the house of the Lord in Shiloh, and the child was young. And they slew a bullock and brought the child to Eli. And she said, O my Lord, as thou soul liveth, my Lord, I am the woman that stood by thee here praying unto the Lord. For this child I prayed, and the Lord hath given me my petition which I asked of him. Therefore also I have lent him to the Lord. As long as he liveth, he shall be lent to the Lord. And he worshiped the Lord there.
So I chose this part of the story because, as we know, before Hannah conceived, she was barren, and she went to the God of Israel and said, If you give me this child, I will give him to you. He will be your child. I will merely be a vessel, which is a huge thing within itself, because it's like, here you are, you're barren, you can't have a child, and you're praying for a child that won't even be yours. You're praying to carry the child and give the child to the God of Israel. So then you're able to have the child. And then you wean the child. So then you're making a deeper connection with that child, because it doesn't take 2 seconds to wean a child. Like, it takes a couple months to get a child weaned, right? So she creates that connection with Samuel, her child, and then eventually still has to give him up to the God of Israel. But she does it because she made a vow to the God of Israel. She made a promise to the God of Israel saying, listen, if you do this for me, I will give this child to you. And I think that that is one of the strongest things that you can do, because here you are, you can't have children. You finally have your child, you wean them, you create a connection with them, but then eventually you have to give them up anyways. I think that speaks to the amount of strength that Hannah had to have had, and the amount of faith that she had in the God of Israel as well, because she didn't have to go and pray to him. She could have just stayed in her misery and been upset that she couldn't have a child, but she went and she prayed to the God of Israel. She pled and begged for a child, and she had the child, and then she followed through with her vow.
Certainly. I think that's she took back control of her life. I think especially in the situation where she was where her husband had another wife that was bearing children, she could have been stuck in her head forever. The thoughts would have never stopped. But she
Mhm.
said, no, that is not what I'm going to do. I'm not going to sit here and take that. I'm going to go change my fate. And she did. And she did it through her spirituality and through solely depending on the God of Israel. And even she recognized that through then giving Samuel to him forever, for the rest of his life. So certainly.
And I don't even think that, like, as if she was barren, can't have a child. She prays to the God of Israel to have a child. And then she becomes pregnant and she has the child. I think that is the greatest, like, gift that she could have given the God of Israel, was giving him back, or giving him Samuel. I think that is the best gift that she could have given him, because here she is not able to have that, and now she does. And even the act of her weaning Samuel, like, she's, even after she's had him and she knows, okay, I know what's going to happen. I know I'm going to have to give up my only son, the son that I have been able to have for the God of Israel. She is still, like, preparing him and making sure that he is ready, I guess, in, like, some way to be given unto the God of Israel. She's not just, okay, I just had a child, here, take it. Like, she makes sure that she weans him. She makes sure that she, does that for the God of Israel. I think that even speaks, that her action speaks so much louder than, her words even.
Yeah, I so agree with what you said, Hadassah. And it's like two things stand out to me is like one, when she decides to give up Samuel, she takes like offerings before the God of Israel. And I think that's so important, is like through your struggles with, fighting mind over matter, is to just remember to express gratitude and practice gratitude, because just in general, you're more likely to want to give to someone that's grateful versus someone that isn't grateful. And then two, what Sarah said about tapping into your spirituality, something that stood out to me with the first verse is that it says, and the Lord remembered her. And to me, that's just a reminder of the importance of like consistently praying and having like really good spiritual routines, like our new moons and our Sabbaths, which are built in to like remind the God of Israel of your petition. Elder Ambler did one message where he's basically saying, there's a lot of noise in the world and God of Israel is not on earth with us anymore. And so like we really have to take our spirituality up in order for us to be heard, and like figure out ways to amplify our prayer, whether that's working with our community like Esther did, or even just consistently going before the Lord and laying it all out on the plate like Hannah did. So I love those 2 points.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that I love the point you make about consistency, because you can't just go to the God of Israel one time and be like, give this to me, and then wake up the next day and be like, oh, do I have it? Like, you need to make sure that if you really want something, you need to be consistent with that, and you need to keep asking for that, and you need to show how bad you want it. And not just ask for it one time, sit back and hope that he answers your prayer, but show it to him through consistency, show it to him through your actions, show it to him through even having a feast for the God of Israel, just things like that, where you can show your gratitude to the God of Israel and show him that this is something that you really want, something that you're serious about, and that if he gives it to you, that you will use and you will cherish forever. So let's go back to our strategies, our list of strategies, and see and talk about what strategies we think Hannah used to get through her emotional roadblock with giving up her only child. So what do we think here?
This is interesting. Definitely prayer.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
Now that we have that, I feel like in a way she evaluated her priorities. Like she definitely knew what she wanted, to the point where her husband was like, am I not enough for you?
Yes,
She knew what she wanted. Okay. She had no apologies for what she knew would, fulfill her heart. So I definitely think she evaluated what would mean the most for her, for sure.
For sure. And I think she also thought about the big picture. because you can't make a promise like that to the God of Israel and not follow through. And you have to think about what the God of Israel would do to you after something like that, especially to that child that you promised him. If you promise him a child and then go back and say, no, I really want this child, actually, he could cut the child's life short.
Yes.
Like, you could have the child one day, you wake up the next day, the child isn't there. Like, you don't want to play with the God of Israel when it comes to something like this. So I think she definitely thought about the bigger picture when she was making the final decision to ultimately give her son to the God of Israel.
I think even adding on to your point, Miriam, I think that like she had to at least think about like what, not even just what the God of Israel would have in store for her, but what does the God of Israel have in store for this child? Because having it be an Israelite boy in Israel that she is offering up to the God of Israel and giving back to the God of Israel, like that's not coincidence. That's not by chance at all. Like the God of Israel knew what he was doing. He knew why he was doing it, and he obviously had bigger plans for Samuel. So I'm sure she had to have like thought of what does the God of Israel have in store for this child, especially, considering that she's the one who is carrying him.
Yeah, that's true. Because it's like you have to think about who your child could potentially be, right? And who your child could be for the God of Israel. I think that's something that our parents think about when we were born, as we grow up. Like, even now, they think about, okay, who is my child going to be for the God of Israel? Are they going down the right path of being someone good for the God of Israel? Or are they going down the path of being someone not so good for the God of Israel? Like, how is my God going to use this gift that I gave him and my child to better this nation? Or is the God of Israel not going to use my child? Like, I think our parents do think about things like that. And I think that's definitely something that Hannah thought of during this whole process, for sure.
And then really quick, because I feel like that's such like a interesting thing to think about, because it's like later on you had, I think it was Eli's sons that were doing evil in Israel, and like Samuel sort of like took over that next leadership role. So it's so interesting that you said that, Hadassah, because it's like it again just showcases how our actions can trickle down and impact the like direction the nation literally goes in, and we can have no idea, you know what I'm saying? So that's like really interesting and a little bit intimidating to think about as well.
Oh my God. Yeah, like the whole nation could be on our backs. And we're just like, okay, trying to figure out what's best for everyone. But yeah, I think that's something that we think about too, like growing up and trying to figure out what our place is in the nation and how we can help out or how we can give back to our God, our parents, our families. We definitely don't want to be the one that doesn't give back or doesn't, turn back to the God of Israel. Like, you want to be someone that the nation can be dependent on and the God of Israel can be dependent on. So it's really just how can the nation be dependent on me? How can the God of Israel be dependent on me? So I think that all of those things are definitely things that Hannah thought about that when she was, not considering, but just thinking about the fact that she would have to give her child to the God of Israel, which, as we said, is not an easy feat. So, in the realm of strong Israelite women, we have another one here that I wanted to spotlight. This is Jael. And for those who know the story of Jael, she was a very, very, very strong woman who did an amazing thing. And for those who don't, we're about to read it. So if you don't know, now you know. Um, do I have a volunteer for this story?
I can go ahead. All
Okay.
right. And it reads, Howbeit Sisera fled away on his feet to the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, for there was peace between Jabin the king of Hazar and the house of Heber the Kenite. And Jael went out to meet Sisera, and said unto him, Turn in, my lord, turn in to me, fear not. And when he had turned in unto her into the tent, she covered him with a mantle. And he said unto her, Give me, I pray thee, a little water to drink, for I am thirsty. And she opened a bottle of milk, and gave him drink, and covered him. Again he said unto her, Stand in the door of the tent, and it shall be, when any man doth come and inquire of thee, and say, Is there any man here? That thou shouldst say no. Then Jael, Heber's wife, took a nail of the tent, and took an hammer in her hand, and went softly unto him, and smote the nail into his temples, and fastened it into the ground, for he was fast asleep and weary. So he died. And behold, as Barak pursued Sisera, Jael came out to meet him, and said unto him, Come, and I will show thee the man whom thou seekest. And when he came into her tent, behold, Sisera lay dead, and the nail was in his temples. So God subdued on that day Jabin the king of Canaan before the children of Israel. And the hand of the children of Israel prospered and prevailed against Jabin the king of Canaan until they had destroyed Jabin king of Canaan.
So, this is a crazy story. I feel like it's very self-explanatory how crazy it is. But thinking about Jael's mental state while all this is happening, she sees Sisera running away from the battle. She brings him into her home, gives him food and drink, knows exactly who he is too. Like, she sees him and knows who he is. It's not just a random man that she just lured into her tent and killed. Like, she sees who this man is. And she gets a nail and hammers it into his head. Like, that is a brutal way to die. It's not like she slipped a little something in his drink to make him like sleep. No, she put the nail to his head and hammered it into his head. And imagine what Barack was thinking when he walked into her tent and saw that. Like, that is crazy.
Woman. Fastened it to the ground. Like, it was like a little extra pizzazz. Like, I'm gonna
Yes.
And I was like, I want to know the backstory, honestly.
Right, exactly. Oh my God.
What did he do?
Exactly. Oh my gosh. And for those who don't know, Sisera was the captain of the army of the Canaanites who Israel was going to battle against the Canaanites. And the whole army was wiped out. And Sisera fled. And that's how he found Jael. And Barak came and found Sisera. But he was taken care of. And then we see in the end, Israel was delivered from the hand of the Canaanites. They prevailed over the Canaanites. And that is also due to the fact that Jael did what she did. Mm-hmm. So if we go back and we think about our strategies, what strategies or what kind of mental state do we think Jael was in when she was doing everything she was doing?
I think definitely thinking about the bigger picture and taking herself out of the equation, because the mental state you have to be in to do that to somebody, like the mental state that it'll take for you to be calm, cool, and collected to, give him milk and make sure he's fed and make sure this and make sure that and give him shelter and, give him a place to sleep, like the mental state you have to be in to be that chill and just be like, okay, yeah. And then however long later, she's nailing or she's putting a nail through his head. You can't think of it like, I'm not going to say you can't think of yourself in that situation because you physically are doing it, but you can't think of yourself in that situation because it's like you have to take yourself out of that. You have to disassociate a little bit, you know? So I think definitely thinking about the bigger picture and just thinking of how this can help Israel, how this is going to help Barak, how this is going to, you know, deliver Israel from the hands of the Canaanites. Like just thinking larger than the situation at hand, I think is definitely one of the strategies she used to like get through that.
Yeah, and I love that point, Hadassah, because you can't be serving him his milk and his food with shaking hands and be nervous when you're letting him into the tent, because then he's gonna be like,
Why are you so nervous?
why are you being like this? Why are you acting like this?
I was asking for milk.
So you have to be so like calm and like, yeah, come into my tent. You want some milk? I got some milk. Like, you want some food? I got some food. And then murder him? Like your mental state, like you have, that is cool, calm, and collected if I've ever seen it. Like that is a different level of just being like, I'm thinking about everybody else in this situation and I'm taking myself out of it, me and my own anxiety, and I am doing what I need to do for the betterment of my people.
Yeah, I like 1,000% agree. And I'm also trying to think like maybe if evaluating your priorities within it. I do think it's interesting because it says he chose the tent, from my understanding, because there was peace between the two houses. But it was something in Jael just sort of new. And like bringing back to Hadassah's point, like when they talk about like military training and like getting soldiers to like get over the fear of killing, they say that what you said, Hadassah, like part of it you have to remove yourself from the actions you're taking. And another tip is like you have to have a stronger fear of being killed as opposed to doing the killing.
Yeah.
So part of me wonders if like evaluating her priorities was the same way, and you can really apply that to your own life as well. As like when you have this daunting task, like are you going to let the task overtake you, or are you going to let the fear of maybe not seeing yourself realize your own potential like lead you forward? So I think this is an interesting story, and I still want to know, like, Jael, what was the backstory?
Right. Like, what's going on? Like, how did we get here? Oh my God. Especially if there was like peace between the households. Like, it couldn't have been that good and dandy.
Something like
something must have ticked her off. And she was like, this man, he needs to go.
Immediately.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So we went to the story of Jael, but I was thinking, like we said, there were peace between the households, and you think about the people around you, the company you keep, how your opinions of them may change based off of one small thing that we may or may not know about, how they can affect the decisions you make. So I have a question for you, the panel, and for the viewers. How does the company you keep affect your mental state and the decisions you make? Do you let them affect your mental state and your decisions? Is it kind of inevitable with the kind of person you are? Like, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I definitely feel like I've had instances where the company I've kept has helped me for the better. One thing that I always share with my siblings is it's so funny because my whole background is STEM, but I feel like I'm more in the artistic frame of mind. But when I was in high school, I was in a magnet academy for like science research and medicine, and you're with like the same 60 people throughout the journey. And there was such a strong benefit of being with that same group, because it was like we would form things like study sessions because we were all going through the same thing. Like all of us had like the same goals as far as wanting to, go to a good college. So I remember we literally were like sharing our college submission applications, like editing each other's things to like help get ahead. And it really like makes the process easier when you have people that have like a strong, positive mindset towards doing better. What I also think is funny is one of my sort of like toxic traits, if you will, is sometimes you have those friends that are just like killing it. And when you speak to them, you go home and you're like, well, what am I doing?
Exactly. What am I doing wrong?
Take like a little break from our talking. And that's my toxic trait. So I know I'm like, okay, you need to get it together and go back and like learn and be around them. So I think it definitely plays an impact, and you shouldn't be like me and not sometimes realize when you're holding your own self back. But yeah, I definitely think it has an impact for sure.
I would also very much so agree that the company you keep can affect your decisions either positively or negative, or your mental state positively or negatively. One thing that my parents have said my entire life going through school and, trying to choose the right friends is always try to be around people who are smarter than you. And although, like Rachel said, that can be like so what am I doing? I know I studied for the exact same test as them, and how come they got a 90 and I got a 60? How come that? Where's the disconnect? But I think just they're not saying that for no reason. My parents aren't saying that for no reason. They're saying that because they know and understand how heavily the company you keep can affect you. Like if you're around people who are constantly just doing bad and constantly just having I don't care attitude, and they just walk through life like just getting by, then that is going to start to rub off on you. But if you're around people who constantly push you and constantly motivate you, and even if they're doing better than you want to be like them, and you strive to be like them, I think that's, so important when it comes to the company you keep. So yeah, I think the company you keep definitely does affect your mental state.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that like Rachel said, they can affect your decision making heavily when you either make, good decisions for yourself or not so great decisions for yourself. And then as you get older, you can kind of see, okay, like this person is here for me. This person isn't really here for me. Let me change how I move around certain people just to protect yourself. And just to be like, okay, I see how you're doing. I see what you're doing. It's not working with me. Let me just take a step back. And sometimes it's really important to take that step back because you need to do that more so for yourself than other people. And the reason I asked this question is because this question made me think about the kings of Israel and how a lot of them there were a lot of bad kings and a few good kings. And the good kings did not have a lot of good influence when it came to the kings before them. A lot of the time, a good king was in between a lot of bad kings. So they didn't have a really good influence when it came to the people around them. But some of the good ones didn't let the bad ones really change their ruling or how they felt about the God of Israel and their faith. So who I want to talk about right now is King Asa and the kind of king he was and how he didn't let the influence of others determine what his rule was going to be like. So I'll start reading. And Abijam slept with his fathers, and they buried him in the city of David, and Asa his son reigned in his stead. And in the 20th year of Jeroboam, king of Israel, reigned Asa over Judah. And 41 years reigned he in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Maacah, the daughter of Abishalom. And Asa did that which was right in the eyes of the Lord, as did David his father. And he took away the Sodomites out of the land and removed all the idols that his fathers had made. And also Maacah, his mother, even her he removed from being queen, because she had made an idol in a grove. And Asa destroyed her idol and burned it by the brook Kidron. But the high places were not removed. Nevertheless, Asa's heart was perfect with the Lord all his days. And he brought in the things which his father had dedicated, and the things which himself had dedicated into the house of the Lord, silver and gold vessels, And there was a war between Asa and Baasha, king of Israel, all their days. And Baasha, king of Israel, went up against Judah and built Ramah, that he might not suffer any to go out or come in to Asa, king of Judah. Then Asa took all the silver and the gold that were left in the treasures of the house of the Lord and the treasures of the king's house, and delivered them into the hand of his servants. And King Asa sent them to Benhadad, the son of Tabrimon, the son of Hezion, king of Syria, that dwelt at Damascus, saying, There is a league between me and thee, and between my father and thy father. Behold, I have sent unto thee a present of silver and gold. Come and break thy language with Baasha, king of Israel, that he may depart from me. So Benhadad hearkened unto King Asa, and sent the captains of the hosts which he had against the cities of Israel, and smote Ijon and Dan and Abel Beth Maachah and Sinneroth, and with all the land of Naphtali. And it came to pass, when Baasha heard thereof, that he left of building of Ramah and dwelt in Tisra. Then Asa made a proclamation throughout all Judah, none was exempt. And they took away the stones of Ramah and the timber thereof, wherewith Baasha had builded. And King Asa built with them Jebah of Benjamin and Mizpah. The rest of the acts of Asa and all his might, and all that he did, and the cities which he built, are they not written in the book of the chronicles of the kings of Judah? Nevertheless, in the time of his old age, he was deceased in his feet. And Asa slept with his fathers and was buried with his fathers in the city of David his father, and Jehoshaphat his son reigned in his stead. Wow. So Asa really speaks to how you can be exposed to a bad example. With his father Abijam, he did not walk in the ways of the God of Israel. He was not faithful to the God of Israel. He brought idols and groves into the kingdom. And even he got rid of his mother. Like, he got rid of her title to the point where you're like, no, like, this is my God. I'm going to be faithful to him. Everyone who isn't can leave. I don't care who it is. I don't care what you are. You can leave. And the fact that he was perfect, his heart was perfect all his days. Like, that's a long time to be perfect every single day. That's a long time. And the fact that he had that example, but said, I'm going to walk in the way of David, my father, not my father, Abijam, but David, my father, my forefather. That says a lot about his heart and the way that he feels about his God, and not letting other people get in the way of his goals and what he wanted for his people, and what he wanted to show his God, how he was faithful and a humble servant.
And that's so important, because just, I'm sure even like having to do that to his mom and having to take away her title and essentially, like, in today's age, like, cut her off.
Yeah.
I know some people are like, oh, I can cut off anybody. Your family? Your mom? You can just cut off your mom? But he was like, listen, yeah, you're my mom, but I know I'm grown. I know what I want to do. I know where I want to see myself. I know what I have to do in order to see myself in the places I want to see myself. And you are stopping that. So I need you gone. I need you gone. And like you said, Miriam, I think that just speaks to, even though he had bad influences around him, and I'm sure there were other people who were just not what he needed, and people who were spewing negativity into his head. That speaks to just how strong mentally he was and how much control he had over his own mind.
Yeah, I agree 1,000%. I feel like this is such a good example of mind over matter that was chosen, because, when we look through the history of Israel, especially with our prophets, which is why it's so funny when people come into the nation that are new and they're like, I want to be a prophet. It's like, oh, have you read the Bible? But it's true. Like, I would say going back to like our strategies, he definitely had big picture, like what Hadassah was describing, because just to be like so aligned with the God of Israel to the point where like it doesn't matter what anyone says, like even if the nation is like against you, your own like mother is against you, like you're still gonna do what's right, is so commendable and even intimidating when I like think about putting myself in that place. Like I feel like our aunties and elders are so supportful overall, and so like the idea of like, well, what if they weren't, you know what I'm saying, or like how that would feel to have like a whole like nation against you, your own family, and you still have to be strong in that takes like such a crazy amount of like mind really being over matter. So it's just definitely something to reflect on and see if like we could ever potentially be in that position, be that strong enough. It's aspirational.
Seriously. Oh my gosh. And for sure, big picture. And I also think he evaluated his priorities. I feel like definitely when thinking about what he was going to do about his mom, I'm sure he didn't just wake up one day and say, Mom, you got to get out. I'm sure he thought about it and said, at the end of the day, I want the house of the Lord to be clean. I want everyone to be worshiping the God of Israel and doing what he wants us to do, right? So he had to think about, do I want that more than my mother having her title? Obviously, the answer was yes. But it's like you have to think about things like that. Like you have to think about the way people are going to think about you and not care and be like, that's what they think, that's their opinion, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, I only care about what the God of Israel thinks about me. So what everyone else, it's just words, because they really have no effect on me. But the God of Israel ultimately has all the effect on me. So I need to think about what he wants from me and what he wants out of this nation.
Yeah, I 100% agree with what you said, Miriam. I think it's like such a powerful thought because it's so hard to just like it's so hard not to listen to people. Like it's incredibly difficult, and especially like today where there's so many outside influences and there are so many things that are being said all at once by so many different people and from so many different parts of the world with so many different like perspectives. It's so hard not to listen to people, and it's hard to even like split your mind. I think it's even harder being an Israelite because you have other things being said to you all the time. So I think it's hard to just split your mind from, okay, this is what the world is saying and this is what the world is doing, and then this is what I need to be doing, and just being unapologetically like an Israelite. And I think that is what Asa was. I think he was unapologetically an Israelite. And like you said, Miriam, he was going to make sure that everybody who was in the house of the Lord was worshiping the God of Israel. If anyone even had like second thoughts, he's like, okay, you're gone. Like, you don't have to be here.
Bye.
He wants to make sure it was as pure and as like clean and as like Israel as it could be. And I just think that's beautiful. I think that's so beautiful.
Right, for sure. And I just love the fact that even though there weren't a lot of kings that were good, the good ones were good. And they always stuck to their faith and stuck to the God of Israel's will. And that was it. They didn't care about what other people had to say, especially if it was not in line with what the God of Israel wanted. They were like, I'm going to do what I need to do for my God. And that's how all of them were. It's hard to be a good king in the nation, because if it were easy, then all of them would have been good, right? But the easy thing is to be a leader for the people, right? And to go with what the people want, to be in their good graces. But at the end of the day, you have to, in order to be a good leader, you need to lead for the God of Israel. And that's exactly what Asa did his entire reign, his entire life. And I think that that is so commendable. I think another leader that comes to mind when I think about someone who really led for the God of Israel was King Josiah. And the fact that he started his reign at such a young age is so crazy, because at 8 years old, like your mind is malleable, right? Like you are a child. You are still being formed, right? So to come into the kingdom as an 8-year-old boy after your father was assassinated, and that was your only example as a king, it's like, how are you supposed to be good? How are you supposed to do right in the eyes of the God of Israel? Let's read this scripture right here. I'm going to read it real quick. And Josiah was 8 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 31 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Jedidah, the daughter of Adiah of Boscath. And he did that which was right in the sight of the Lord, and walked in all the way of David his father, and turned not aside to the right hand or to the left. So I think that definitely his mother, Jedidah, most likely had a huge effect on what Josiah did, because as we know, the mother is the first teacher, right?
Yeah.
So if Josiah did right in the sight of the Lord and walked in the way of David, then his mother had to have a huge part in that for sure, because that's who you learn from. So in Josiah's case, we can see his company, and we can see the company he keeps and say that that's a good company to keep. When it's in favor of the God of Israel and they sway your decisions to make right decisions and faithful decisions, then we can say that that's the company that you want to keep. But everyone else, you can dash them away, because we don't need that.
No,
No, yeah.
no, I think that's so true what you said, Miriam. And I think it's really important for us to remember there's nothing new really under the sun. Like some things can change, but ultimately we should use that to our advantage. Like we should use the perspectives of those that are older than us, whether it's a couple of years to like numerous like decades, to our advantage to get, perspective on the challenges that we face so that we have, an up when navigating this life. And that's what I love about being an Israelite, is the way our community is designed, with elders, with priests, even with being able to like read our forefathers' story. It's like you're constantly given examples on how to navigate different challenges. So it's a huge benefit.
Right, for sure.
Yeah, that's like, yeah, because like Miriam, you said earlier, Josiah was 8.
Yes.
8? What do you mean? Like yeah, okay, he can form sentences. Yeah, he can have his own thoughts, but they're not king thoughts. They're not
Right.
they're not how do I need to reign a group of people at 8?
Yeah.
And like you said, there were a lot of bad kings, and a lot of people had to live through bad kings. So it's like, how do you, as an 8-year-old, how do you navigate the bad advice from people from the good advice? And I
Yeah.
think it's also, we have to give like, praise to Jedidah, his mother, because she could have just been like, yeah, I'm just gonna, let you guys see what you want from him, and then he'll come out how he comes out. But no, she was like, listen,
Yes.
you're gonna be a good king, and I'm gonna make sure you're gonna be a good king, because I know what these people have lived through. I know it, and I know what I've lived through, and I don't want you to end up like some of these kings in Israel. So I
Right.
think that is just, I think also that speaks to the God of Israel, and that speaks to just how powerful he is, and
Yeah,
just, yeah.
for sure. And if we look at our strategies for getting through the roadblocks, I think we can definitely say getting outside perspectives for Josiah and Jedidah is a big thing. And I think we can also say, thinking about the big picture and what the God of Israel wants from his leaders, from his people. Um, because at the end of the day, like, you really have to think about, yeah, people may want this, but they don't always want what's best for them, right? So I think that, but the big thing here is definitely getting that outside perspective from Jedidah, his mother. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I 1,000% agree. And I even think it highlights, comparing it to the story of Hannah, just that the actions of our parents can literally impact, again, the course of our lives. Like whether you choose to listen to, your mom and her advice, whether that advice is good or not, like it can literally change the trajectory of your life. So really
Yeah.
I think of that.
Yeah, for sure. Oh my God, for sure. And then we have another example of kind of someone who was in the same boat, but did a little different. So this is King Jehoiachin. It reads, "Now the rest of the acts of Jehoiakim and his abominations which he did, and that which was found in him, behold, they are written in the book of the kings of Israel and Judah. And Jehoiachin his son reigned in his stead. Jehoiachin was 8 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 3 months and 10 days in Jerusalem. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord." So do we see the difference here?
Mm-hmm.
Because Josiah didn't only reign for like 3 months.
Oh.
Jehoiachin was in there and out of there so
Yeah.
fast.
It was like,
They said, "Yeah, you're 8," and it shows. They said, "Absolutely not. I'm so sorry." And that really speaks to the company that he probably kept, because unlike Josiah, Jehoiachin didn't have a Jedidah. He probably had the advisors that his father had, Jehoiakim, who did wrong in the sight of the Lord. So when you have people in your ear at that young age where you are malleable and people can sway you to make any sort of decisions, then you're going to be more inclined to do what people tell you to do because you have no other baseline. Your baseline is evil, 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 evil. So if people tell you to do that evil, you're going to do it because you probably, maybe he did have people trying to tell him to do different. But obviously he didn't listen to them and didn't listen to them fast enough because they got him out as soon as he was done. So I don't know.
But no, I think you bring up such an excellent point, Miriam. Even circling back to what was said earlier, like you really do have to do an audit of who's in your circle. Like I was saying, like you got to figure out who you need to demote and maybe give a promotion when it comes to your friends and even sometimes your family members, because you almost like align yourself with your frequency. Like if you're around people that are successful and living righteously, it becomes achievable to you. It becomes the norm. Versus if you're around people that, are ridden in like self-doubt and are acting unrighteously, that can become your norm. So it's just really important to do like consistent audits of like, what do I need in my life? Is this good or bad? And how can I make changes accordingly?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So then we can definitely say that he maybe evaluated his priorities, but they weren't priorities that were good. And they weren't priorities that were in line with what the God of Israel wanted for his people. And I think even you can say he probably got outside perspectives, but they weren't good perspectives. So again, like Rachel said, like you have to really look at who you're getting these perspectives from, who you're getting these opinions from, and see if they really hold weight, or if they're just talking to talk, or if they're talking to get you on a path they know you don't want to be on. So a lot of the time when you think of mind over matter, you have to think of the people the company you keep, and you think of the people around you and say, okay, how do they affect my mind in the case of what I'm trying to do to better myself? Are they with me? Are they against me? Are they with me sometimes, against me other times? Like, who can I trust? Who can I not trust to get me to where I'm trying to be and where I'm trying to end up in my life?
Yes.
Well, I think we're kind of cutting it close on time. And I didn't even realize that we're already at that mark. But I really, really, really enjoyed this discussion today. I know that we lost Sarah in there, which is really, really unfortunate. But to the viewers, I really hope that, you enjoyed everything you heard today. I hope that you shared your strategies and the ways that you kind of get through your roadblocks. And I hope that you even shed light to new strategies that people can use to get through whatever blocks they're getting through. And to my panel, thank you so much for doing this with me. I really, really appreciate it. I appreciate the conversation we had, and I really learned a lot about you guys and myself through this conversation. So I really enjoyed it. Is there anything that you guys want to say before we sign off here?
I would say it's just really important to know yourself, know what strategies work for you and lock on them. Make sure that your spirituality is at the forefront so that you can do everything possible, maybe reach your spiritual limit and then just leave it in God of Israel's hands. Trust the process to get over that matter and use your mind and spirituality.
Mm-hmm. Completely agree with that. And I would also just say it's so important to just take that first step. So if there is something that like you feel you can't have, or you feel like you can't do, or you're not good enough to do, just take the first step, and you can always have that grace period that Sarah was talking about earlier. You can always have that grace period to, take yourself out of the equation or to stay in the, equation.
Yes, I love that. Thank you again for joining us tonight. Make sure to tune in tomorrow at 2 p.m. for our broadcast on YouTube, and come back next week for our Friday night Bible study, our Friday night lessons, 7:30. Also, make sure you're tuning in to Fi-Fi and 66 Books and all the extra things we have going on this channel. Make sure you like, you subscribe, you comment, you share with anyone who would enjoy this message. Thank you again for tuning in, and I bid you peace.